Thank you. Thank you for the invitation again. So whenever I teach, I rely heavily on a drawing board because I think it's really important to have visual representations of uh, what I'm teaching. Now, with this particular class, it's like we're going to talk about the development of the chakras. Since we have had, give me 1 second, got to re-plug in my device. I don't know why it always disconnects. All right, let's see. There we go. Okay. So in terms of the chakras, I mentioned last time that the solar logos throws out a part of itself. So I guess we'll start from the beginning because some people may be here for the first time. So in the last section, we talked about the first, second, and the third logos. In terms of the development of the chakra, we are going to focus on the third logos. So each ray of Foha, I call them minor rays of Foha. Another word for these minor rays of Foha is the Sutratma. The Sutratma simply means thread. So sutra means thread and atma means self. So the word Sutratma means self-thread or thread of the individuality. Now, the self-thread is actually a fine thread-like ray of light that emanates forth from the solar logos. And each one of these is actually the basis of what we call the human energy field. So if you look down here, I'm going to try to draw a model. So we consider this the fully extended to the planes of matter, of which there are supposed to be 7. And at a certain point, you look down here and what you will find is what appears to be a magnetic field, which actually symbolizes the early development of the human energy field. So as you can see, we are an extension from the solar logos through this thread-like structure down through the planes of matter. We are a function of the energy of the logos. So when this thread first appears in the planes of matter, what you will notice is that it's basically structureless or featureless. So the only thing that you'd really notice is that the thread itself looks almost like a spider's web in terms of how thin it is. So it's thin, it's flattish, and it appears to be gold. Everything in the higher planes appears to be carved out of gold or has a gold-like appearance. So imagine a thin, flattish gold thread hanging from the solar logos. Over the course of time, and we're talking extensive periods of time. In fact, Barbara, when we were talking a little bit earlier, she mentioned the terms Manvatara and Pralaya. And Manvatara is the actual appearance of the solar logos in the beginning of a system of development. It's the day of manifestation, whereas Pralaya is where everything basically goes into a state of quiescence or quietude. So during the day of manifestation, these threads, and there are trillions of them that are put forth into the planes of matter, they are first put forth into the mineral and the animal, well, mineral, plant, and then the animal, and then the human bodies, where they undergo structural development. What this means is that, well, what I've discovered is that every rock, every plant, every animal seems to correspond to a certain section of the energy field. So, for instance, a dolphin may actually resonate in the area of the head or head chakras, whereas a bull may resonate more in the sacral root areas. So because the Sutratma is actually physically embodied in each of these types of bodies, it corresponds with the development of a single aspect of the Sutratma. Now, as the Sutratma continues to undergo development through incarnating in the various mineral, plant, animal, and human bodies, if you were to watch it over the course of time, what you would see is that there's points of activity along the Sutratma that begin to show light. So now you look at this thread and it begins to undergo structural changes. These structural changes are first and foremost, for instance, the thread, as soon as the thread hits the pool of matter, the 7 planes of matter, it actually, I'm going to draw an exploded view of it. So the first thing that happens is that thread has a small cylinder of matter that's drawn around it. Okay, it's an incredibly small cylinder, and this cylinder is actually referred to as Brahma Nadi. And what I've discovered is that the term Nadi means river. Does that make sense? If I remember correctly. So Nadi means river or flow. So Brahma Nadi is considered the centralmost meridian of the human energy field. Now, again, if you look at this meridian, there's really nothing inside of it. But over the course of time, again, through embodiment in, right, each of these rays of Foha is put into the body of a mineral, put into the body of a plant, put into the body of an animal, and then ultimately put into the body of a human being, where this channel begins to there's another channel that forms around it, and that channel slowly is formed. And this is, Tria asked earlier, he's like, well, what about the Antiquarana? And the Antiquarana is a secondary tube, right, that forms around the primary tube that we term Brahma Nadi. So this tube, Brahma Nadi, this outer tube is called the Antiquarana. Again, if you're to watch this over the course of time, the Antiquarana really is composed of a series of vortices. So within this channel, at different points, there are vortices that slowly develop and slowly appear over the course of time. Now, they do not appear, they don't appear or evolve in a linear fashion. It's not like you start with 1 and then move to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. It's that anywhere along this canal or along the Antiquarana, these vortices can form. Okay, remember earlier I stated that one of the primary properties of Foha is the appearance of vortices. And this seems to be true at every level. So as the Sutratma is embodying the planes of matter, it forms the Brahma Nadi. As Brahma Nadi experiences contact with the outside world through vibration, right? Everything is vibration. So as the outside world begins to impact Brahma Nadi, it causes the development of the Antiquarana. Now, as our chakras themselves can suffer distortions, which is pretty common because nothing is perfect. So as the chakra itself develops, it basically can suffer distortions. Now, these chakras that are located, I call them Sushumna chakras. As these chakras are also chakras, they can suffer distortion. So it's not like you look at the central channel and think, wow, these vortices are really beautifully functioning. No, it's not the case. They show significant distortion. So when you actually look at the central channel of a person, what you will find is that each one of these sections is filled with debris or matter that we would ultimately call a blockage, but it really isn't a blockage in the traditional sense. It's more like that vortice in the Sushumna is not fully functional, and so material has a tendency to gather into that space and sort of harden, like sediment forms. Okay, now depending on the degree of functionality, of the inner vortice, the material that accretes here will be denser or lighter, depending on, again, the functionality of the inner vortice. So if the inner vortice is hardly functional at all, it'll be incredibly dark or black and it'll be fully filled in. Whereas if the vortice is somewhat functional, but yet there's some debris that's gathering, it'll be a much lighter color. Do you see the difference? So this process continues to happen over the course of time until the Sushumna vortices are brought to a high degree of functioning. Now, at certain points, the chakras begin to emerge from the central channel. In fact, in Talks on the Path of Occultism, Ledbetter writes that according to the Hindu religion, the chakras are not located in the central channel, but they are located in Brahma Nadi, which I found really fascinating. And ultimately, from what I can see, it's true. So there are like thread-like fibers that begin to be projected from Brahma Nadi. So if we're to take a look at this, I'm going to draw an exploded view. Wow. Doesn't let me erase very far back. Let me try this one. Okay, great. So now we have a clean slate. So here we have Brahma Nadi. Inside of Brahma Nadi is that Sutratma. And then slowly we have the formation of a vortice around this. So if we're to look at the top, from the top view, this is basically what we'd be looking at. All right. So if we look at this vortice that forms in and around this, in the small section, say this is a section from where the chakra begins to emerge. Okay, there are these fibers that emanate from Brahma Nadi that come to the edge of this little section, and there they begin to connect and form an opening. Now, as that opening forms, you begin to see something happening outside of the central channel. And this is actually the early stages of the formation of a chakra. So as you continue to watch this process over the course of time, it continues to build in matter until a chakra is essentially formed. Now, I don't really consider it a functional chakra until the chakra begins to have vortical motion. That is, it itself begins to spin in generally a clockwise fashion. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Everyone following along so far? So if we take this, the experience, or I call it the evolutionary trajectory of each person is unique. So what that means is that you have the Sutratma, and over the course of time, you have the development of the Antiquarana, and then you have the development of the chakras from there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll say 6. So there's one vertical axis, and then there are 6 horizontal axes, which represent the front and rear aspects of each of the major chakras. So you have the crown chakra here, root chakra here, third eye, front and rear, throat chakra, front and rear. We'll say heart chakra, front and rear, solar plexus center, front and rear, navel chakra, front and rear, sacral center, front and rear. Now, nobody that I've ever looked at looks like this. The chakras are only developed at this point imperfectly. So if you were to actually look at a real person, what you would see is that this person may have developed a third eye to a considerable extent. They may have developed their throat chakra to a little bit. Their solar plexus center may just be beginning to be developed, and their sacral center may be highly active with some minor spiritual development. This is in reality what a human being looks like in terms of their average chakra development at this point. All of a person's chakras are not open and pretty, or they're not open and fully functional because we've not been here long enough yet. As you can see, I generally state that human beings are only roughly at 27% of their potential development. All right. So, any questions so far? Remember, there are no stupid questions, just stupid answers.
So, Cristo, can you go back on the various verticals, the horizontal chakras?
Right
Which
here.
Which one is the crown? Which one is the...
This is the crown.
Okay.
This is the third eye. So some people do not know this, but each of the 7 major chakras actually has a rear aspect. So the chakras technically, eventually will look like this. So if we're focusing on the third eye, the third eye chakra has as its counterpart what is known as the Alta Major Center. That's in the work of Alice Bailey, or in the work of Yogananda, it's referred to as the Medulla Center. And essentially, these chakras will form an energetic connection and begin to function as a single unit. Okay, that won't happen generally for a very long time. But the reality is that the progress of the development of the chakras ultimately means that they are going to be connected like this. And rather than functioning as 2 separate halves, they're going to function as a singularity. Is that helpful, John?
So you have the crown, you have the third eye, and then you have the throat, followed by what? The heart?
Then the heart, then the solar plexus.
Okay.
Then there's the navel chakra, which is just under the navel, and then there's the sacral chakra.
Okay.
Those are the chakras that I see, followed by their counterparts.
Yeah, I want to ask I want to ask a question. One is that I've heard people speak of a ground chakra, which is a chakra underneath the feet, just like we have the crown chakra up there, that they said there's another one under the feet, down from the feet. And then the other one I want to ask about is that I notice on my chest between my heart chakra and my throat chakra that there seems to be a tightness that I keep working with, I can't get rid of. And is there a chakra in between those 2 places, the throat and the heart?
So I think that you and I specifically yesterday talked about the minor chakras. That in the human energy field, there are major chakras and minor chakras. Basically, all of the smaller points like the eyes, the nostrils, the ears, the mouth, even the nipples, the anus, all of these have minor chakras that are associated with them. There is a chakra underneath the feet. In fact, if I were to draw a picture of it, if this is the feet, a really primitive drawing, but it still gives you some idea. There is a chakra here. Okay, this chakra normally has a perfectly spheroid appearance, and the information that's here, that's visible in the chakra, is actually associated with the major rays. So, for instance, if I look at this chakra, and it generally shows up as having some color associated with it. It could be yellow, blue, green, brown, purple, yellow, and so on and so forth. And it represents the major rays of the personality. So A, yes, there's a chakra there. B, it contains information that's incredibly relevant to the personality. And so I wouldn't normally consider this in this particular conversation because it lies outside of the physical body. Yet, so we have to sort of narrow the field somewhat when we talk about the chakras. Otherwise, it's a very incredibly long conversation. But yes, there is a chakra under the feet. This chakra has different colors that represents key aspects of the personality. All right. to answer your other question, in terms of the chest, there's a chakra between the throat chakra and the heart chakra, but it's not considered a major chakra. It is a minor chakra. The reality, what you're experiencing isn't really related to your throat or this minor chakra, but it's actually related to your heart chakra. So the tightness that you feel is related to a resistance or a blockage, if you will, or a distortion in your heart chakra. Okay. I might draw a picture of it in a little while, but it could prove useful for us. Is that helpful, Anne?
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. I know there's something going on with my heart, but I just couldn't figure out the chakra. But right there, I didn't know they were connected.
Yeah. So if I look at a person, I can see those. There's a triangle of energy there. That's true that Alice Bailey talks about. But again, I consider those minor chakras because they don't show up in the same way, or they don't play the same major role that the major chakras play. Okay. If there's time, we might be able to come back around to it and talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think somebody else is going to ask a question.
I would like to ask a question, Cristo. This is Jamshed.
Hey, Jim.
And you have said, and I heard you say yesterday also, that we're at 27% development. Is that an average, or is everybody at 27%? And if we all are at 27%, then how do we develop?
Well, that's a great question. Okay, and I'm going to get a new sheet of paper here, and I'm going to show you how we develop. So the first thing is this: if you look at a bell curve, basically all of the human beings on this planet have roughly incarnated, or at least the bulk of them have incarnated at roughly the same point of time. We call these life waves in Theosophy, right? So there's the first life wave, the second life wave, and I think that there's a third life wave at this point. But what this means is that for the bulk of people here, we came in at the first life wave. That means on a bell curve, what you're going to find is that most people sort of fall right in the middle of the bell curve in terms of their development. And then you have people who fall on the outer edges of the bell curve, but for the majority of people, we fall right here at around roughly 27% developed. This is where the bulk of humanity rests, and this is the reason that humanity is so troubled at this time, that really we're just a bunch of adolescents running around causing a bunch of mischief based upon our lack of development.
Hey, Cristo?
Yes.
What would 100% look like based on your graphic there?
That's so far beyond.
Okay.
Yeah, let me think if I can describe it.
Wouldn't that become a master then if a person is at 100%?
That would be Jesus walking on water.
Yeah.
I like all of those responses.
That was good, Shanti. I like that.
It looks much different from where we are right now, especially in terms of the development of our chakras. So again, when somebody comes to me, I am anticipating at this point a certain level of development. In fact, I tell people that there is an unconscious expectation of people on this planet at this point in time that the average human being has a certain level of chakra development in terms of the solar plexus or emotions, in terms of the third eye development or the intellect, a certain amount of spiritual development as well, and a certain ability to communicate. And so we have this expectation that's unspoken that a human being is a human being because they've reached a certain level of chakra development. Now, people who fall below that are, and this is not my position, but this is a way of describing it. The people who fall below this level of chakra development are normally considered subhuman. And those who fall above it are actually considered to be masters or adepts, right? this is how I see it. And so us here, you know, we're basically average humanity. And that's okay because we're just on a trajectory of development. Now, somebody else asked, you know, so does anybody have any questions about this, the idea of being 27% developed?
And
Okay,
we're going to, I'm sorry, the second question that Jamshid asked was, how do you develop it?
how do you develop it? This is a great question. In fact, it's one of my favorites. So there's a couple different ways. So the first way is this, that as the solar logos projects a part of itself down through the planes of matter, the planes of matter themselves, in my opinion, are vibrational states that wash over the Sutratma and to begin to slowly, and I mean slowly effect changes, structural changes in the Sutratma. Okay, so the planes of matter are basically living frequencies that begin to tune the Sutratma as they wash over it to cause structural changes. This does happen. This is incredibly slow, and this is why evolution takes place over millions or trillions of years. It's a slow process. The other way, at this point, that is more common and faster is that, and I'm going to draw this out for you, is that you basically do something incredibly foolish. And I'm going to tell you what that is in just a second. Some of you can guess what that is. So what you do to expedite your evolution is you find somebody else and you partner with them. Now, if you look, what happens is that they have development that mostly will be opposite of your development. And so when you two come together, your energy field is constantly impinging upon their field, and their field is constantly interacting with your field. And this expedites the process of development by forcing the development of your field along the lines of their development. This is why relationships are so difficult, because we are being pushed on or opened in ways that we are not currently opened. Does this make sense for you?
Yes, heart coherence.
Well, it's not, this is actually, the heart is just my little added figure here, but really this is about friction.
Friction.
Friction. You know, Alice Bailey has this concept of fire by friction. And I mean, how many people here have experienced so when it comes down to it, do you tend to experience more friction in your relationships or more harmony? See, I think that people tend to create or experience more friction because it's friction that drives evolution.
So are you suggesting two people partner to meditate, or?
No. What happens is that I put all of my chakras into your chakras, and in that way, my energy constantly pinging off your field forces you to develop in a way that your chakras are not currently open, and vice versa.
Yeah, could it be that we take on their stuff that's not developed?
No. This is something that's simpler. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. So this is a pairing that happens all the time. I'm going to give you two examples. The first one is you have somebody, either male or female, who has a developed sacral center. They partner with somebody who has an undeveloped sacral center. So then you have this person, male or female, who's continually pressing or activating this other individual's sacral center, asking for or demanding sex, which that continually pinging of the sacral center does the job of evolution and slowly brings it into a state of functionality. Now, the same thing happens here. So imagine this person has an incredibly strong will, and this person is continually pushing on this person, right? Day after day, month after month, year after year, this person is continuing to bear down energetically on this person, and slowly it causes the formation of their will center, at which point this person begins to push back. Okay, another pairing that happens actually is that the solar plexus center of somebody, either male or female, right, begins to press into this person who is non-emotional. But over the course of time, this person begins to elicit an emotional response in the development of the solar plexus center. So relationships are the primary engine that drive evolution. Go ahead. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I don't, but it sounds good so far, so good.
Yeah, or, here's another example. I mean, how many people do you know who, their mate is what I would call a talkaholic? Talk. And their mate basically just sits there quiet.
So can you repeat your last statement? Like, relationships are the
engine that drive evolution.
And yeah, that's very true.
And they do, because if you don't have relationships, then you are left to the forces of what I would call natural evolution, which is a very slow process. And this is one of the reasons that humanity has made such leaps and strides over the last 3,000 years, or the last 3 or 4 millennia. I mean, it's incredible. And that's because our contacts with one another force the expedited development of our chakras and bring them into a heightened state of activity much more quickly than to say if we were left in the jungle, right? If we have an establishment on the plains and we live in teepees and nothing ever significant really happens there, not that nothing significant happened there, but imagine this. Or you have these people who come in and they conquer and they start forcing their will upon these other individuals, that now there's a system of growth that's being enacted or created. Okay, I don't necessarily think that this is the best way for evolution to occur, but if you look at it from a very practical standpoint, this is exactly what happens.
Cristo, got
Yes.
a question. How about those people who go to a guru to have their kundalini stimulated?
Well, this falls underneath our current examples, but I'm going to redraw my people, okay? So now, rather than having a person who, well, let me see here, new, don't save. So now I'm going to draw the guru, okay? So the guru should have a nice, highly functional crown center, right? A beautifully functional one. So the people who come to him should only have marginally developed, partially developed, or low functioning crown chakras. So when they now come in contact with the guru, the energy field of his crown chakra begins to impact the crown chakras of the devotees and to bring them into higher states of functioning. So it forces their development by being in proximity with the guru. Just like the person whose sacral center, his mate is forced to develop because of his high functioning sacral center, or a man is forced to develop emotions because of the high functioning solar plexus center of his mate, or another person is forced to develop the capacity to communicate or talk because his or her partner talks a lot at him or her. Okay, so this is just one more example of how evolution works in this way to expedite or to quicken evolution. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
What about beings without bodies that influence us?
So what I find is that beings without bodies, are we talking about devas in the Devic kingdom?
Anything up to masters, devas to masters.
at this stage of evolution, it's really difficult to incorporate them into this process because they lie outside of what I would call our physical consciousness. Okay, so the primary factor that's going to drive your evolution is literally the physical relationships with other people that you create or participate in. Okay. I think the other things are, they lie kind of far outside of what we're talking about right now and are harder to incorporate into this space. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions right now?
Yeah, Cristo, I think yesterday you mentioned that meditation and so on basically activates the various chakra centers.
Yes, that is true.
Is it not part of this, I mean, this talk in terms of how do you hasten evolution?
Well, here's the difference. You know, it's kind of like a person. So this person is, we'll say that this person is a normal person who goes out and participates in normal life. Okay. This person goes to work, they go to school, they have kids, they have a wife or a husband, they are responsible for land and a home, etc. That person is going to be is not focused on one thing. They don't live in one chakra alone, but instead there's a little bit of activity here, a little here, a little here, a little here, a little there, right? Now you take somebody who's a meditator, and that person is basically now focusing all of their consciousness in the development of their crown chakra. So now they're retreating from society, they're isolating or secluding themselves in some way. They're generally focused on spiritual study and spiritual practice. And so rather than doing all of these other things here, they have instead focused on this thing here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So now all of their experience lies around their crown chakra, and all of the energy focus there causes the expedited development of their crown chakra, as opposed to having the development of this chakra here and this chakra here and this chakra here. No, all of that energy instead is directed up here to the development of the crown, generally through the practice of meditation or through the practice of spiritual practices as well. Spiritual study, spiritual practice, meditation, contemplation, etc.
Another question. So what can we do to expedite the development of our chakras in just us common mortals?
Yeah, you know, I tell people this all the time. There is only one piece of advice that I give when that question is asked. You know, so the question is, what can you do to expedite the development of your chakras? And the answer is to live a totally uninhibited life. You know,
we will go to prison.
Well, maybe or maybe not. The question is, you know, John, I like you. I like your energy field a lot. I think that you're a very sweet person. Okay.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. So, John, let me ask you this. Let me think about how do I want to phrase this question. Where are you most inhibited in your life?
Actually.
What's that? Sexuality?
No, I think my work.
My work.
Takes too much of my time.
Okay. So no, what we're going to say is that your work is what you dedicate the most of your time to. Okay. So if you think about it this way, your work causes the inhibition of the development of your other chakras. Okay, so you spend most of your energy and time here with work, and that means that now we're missing some of these other key experiences that can result in the growth and development of these other chakras. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So this I'm going to draw a picture for you of what happens. So how many people would agree with me that the object of evolution is the growth and development of the chakras? Anybody?
Agree.
You'd agree?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. At least one person agrees with me. So I mean, this is how I say it. You know, God would not give you chakras if God did not want you to actualize them. Okay? So if this represents a normal human being, what happens is that our goal is the growth or the development of our chakras. Because this results in ever increased awareness, consciousness, more information, more connection to source. So the goal of evolution is really the development of our chakras. And that's why we are stuck in the planes of matter. And that's why we suffer incarnation after incarnation. Now, what happens in terms of our birth, you know, our chakras should be relatively high functioning. But then what happens is the adults around us begin to instill their thoughts and thought forms and say things like, don't talk. You should shut up. You talk too much, right? Sex is dirty. It's filthy. You know, it's wrong. Don't touch yourself there. You have bizarre spiritual ideas. You know, those are...
Women should only be seen and not heard, so we
Well,
don't develop our throat chakra.
This is exactly what I'm saying. So the environment around you begins to instill thought forms into your auric field, which compromise the functioning of your chakras. So when I say that if you want to develop your chakras, that you should live a totally uninhibited life, what that means is that you take your consciousness and you begin to scour these areas and you begin to pluck out or remove these blockages to your growth. That is exactly what I mean. So, like, if I look through John's energy field, John, do you mind if I look through your field? Are you brave to?
Okay, just look.
So, I'm going to pick something that will not embarrass you. Okay. So, John, in terms of this chakra here, is associated with the acquisition of wealth, material wealth, and things of that nature. So, in John's field, there's a belief that translates something like, I don't want to be greedy. Do you resonate with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, imagine this, that John's ability to acquire or amass wealth is now compromised by this belief system, I don't want to be greedy. Do you think that John's soul could grow more quickly or more lusciously if it had more income at its disposal?
Crystal, may I? So in addition, in relationship to what you mentioned earlier, relationship is the engine that drives evolution. So I believe here is also, it's just not relationship with another person, but relationship with, everything is a relationship. So maybe John's relationship with wealth, what he believes about wealth, a relationship with money or something like that. I don't know.
Well,
Is that true?
His belief is tribal. I believe that it's more of a state of consciousness of his birth family or tribe. But the question is this: if John did not have this belief and he had greater income at his disposal, could this actually facilitate his development?
Possibly it could, certainly.
I think that there's a great possibility that it could. You know, the reality is we live in a monetary society. So if you don't have money, guess what? You can't go to the park. You can't get a canoe. You can't get a kayak. You can't buy sufficient food. You can't buy sufficient clothing. You can't do fun things. So the ability to acquire or to amass wealth and to enjoy it is a significant part of our evolutionary development at this point in terms of our participation in society.
Yeah, but I think that I mean, if you focus too much on getting wealth, then you spend too much time on that instead of other things.
Well, I believe that, but I do want to share this with you. This belief acts as an obstacle to the manifestation of wealth. So it makes things harder than what they have to be. Okay? So,
True.
because anytime you carry a negative belief about money or wealth in your field, or any negative belief, it takes up energy and space in your field. And whether you're conscious of it or not, it's sending out a signal that says, oh, well, this signal says, I don't need much. Well, maybe you don't. And that's okay. But it also acts as a barrier to things showing up. So when I say, again, to develop your chakras means that you should enjoy the uninhibited expression of your chakras. Can you see what I'm driving at?
I see what you are driving at.
Okay. You know, it's like how many people sit through conversations where they want to say something, but they don't because it's not polite or it's not the right thing to say, even though it may be the truth. Right? Do you think that it would actually help you grow and evolve to allow your throat chakra to function as normal? You know?
Cristo, I'd like to ask something.
Sure.
As Anne mentioned yesterday, the law of attraction, is that the same thing, or is that somewhere in your heart chakra?
The law of attraction is basically whatever beliefs or belief systems you put here in your field are essentially those things that create your reality. Whether they're put there by you or they're put there by other people, they determine the way that you see and interact with the world. You know, for instance, in your field, in terms of money, there's a little belief here that basically says or translates, I don't want to inconvenience other people by asking for money. Do you resonate with that?
No. No, I don't. I visualize the law of attraction in that I create what, I'm an artist, and I create what I want. Try.
You know, so the reality is this, you have a belief in your energy field that sits there. And this energy is creating your reality. Now what that means is that since it sits between the rear aspect of the sacral center and the root chakra, is that there's something here about not wanting to inconvenience other people by demanding money. Now, I don't know if this is related to your art, your artwork, or what you do in the world, but you know, I can also, in touching your energy field, I know that you are highly, what is the word I want to use? Self-sufficient and independent. Would you describe yourself that way?
Yes, yes. And my palette is being surrounded by beauty. I create that.
Well, let's stop for a second on this idea of being self-sufficient, right?
Right.
What is the downside of that? Does having this ideology of being self-sufficient, does it negatively impact your growth in any way?
Probably. Although 2020 has been one of the best years of my life, I've enjoyed the solitude a lot.
Well, I'm not, you know, I can't really contest that. But the question is, does being solely self-sufficient, self-reliant, does it have a negative side in terms of the development of your chakras?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, this is just an example of what it means to have inhibited functioning of our chakras. Well, our inhibitions are so subtle, so ingrained in our consciousness that we don't really easily see them. Or we're like, oh, that doesn't really bother me. But the reality is, at a deeper level, it does create your reality or alternate in some way that leaves you disadvantaged, right?
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to make a comment based on what Mary says, she says that this year has been the best year of her life. And for many, this year has been an absolute disaster, you know, with the virus, the economy as it is. And so it's kind of kind of ironic that she would say, you know, for her, it's been the best year.
I feel safe.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting because I mean there's nothing absolute about this year being a bad year, you know, like with you, and there are probably many more people who have had a very good year also.
I think it has to do with her self-reliance and her self-sufficiency, right? I mean, basically, it's like that Twilight Zone episode where I'm sure people here have seen it, where basically the world gets bombed and this guy goes underground with his books. And he's like so happy that the world has ended and he's down in the bowels of the earth with his books.
Yeah, the actor's name was Meredith, I think.
I remember.
Something Meredith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he has real thick glasses, right?
Yes, exactly.
And the irony is that they break.
Yeah, his glasses break.
That is the irony, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. But the idea is that he, for a moment, was uninhibited now in his his studies, right? So then the vehicle to that broke. You know, the idea is really to, and I'm sure that each one of you can basically look through your chakras in some way and ask the question, where am I most inhibited in terms of my development? That question is such a vital question to ask for your own growth and development. And in fact, I would even argue for your own freedom. Let's try it once. Ready? I want you to just sit in a space of meditation. And I want you to ask the question, where am I most inhibited? Where am I most inhibited in the development of my chakras? Generally, these answers come through very, very quickly. And I'm just going to ask a couple people. Do you want to share it with me? With us? What'd you get? Anybody? I know these things are... Go ahead.
Heart chakra for me.
Heart chakra. Throat.
Being able to express myself, my truth, and being seen. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if we just take you for a moment, what would it mean for your development if you were actually allowed to fully communicate or to express your individuality through your throat chakra? Would that feel good? Would that cause your growth and evolution to resume? Because
definitely.
Right now with blockages in it, your throat chakra isn't growing. It's not evolving. It's stopped evolving. It's kind of like putting a ceramic container over a plant. What happens to the plant inside of that container? You know the upside down container, the clay pot over the plant. What's the plant look like underneath it?
Dead.
It dies.
It dies. It's yellow. It's spindly. You know, it's laying on its side. You know, it certainly is not growing or evolving at a healthy rate, right? So anytime you throw up obstacles in the field, it causes the chakra development to be delayed. Not terminated.
So how do you develop the throat chakra?
Any of the chakras that we have are developed through use. You know, I consider the human energy field basically the equivalent of the development of musculature. You know, people ask me sometimes, well, how do you develop your chakras? I'm like, well, how do you develop your biceps? Anybody?
Work out.
You use them, right? So you develop your chakras through using them. You know, if you were to look at somebody who is using their third eye a lot or using their mind a lot, they're going to have a nicely developed third eye. If you look at somebody who talks a lot, who shares a lot of information verbally, they're going to have a nice throat chakra. If you look at somebody who is listening like a professional listener, their ear chakras will look really nice. It's because the chakras develop through use. Through non-use, they atrophy or they don't develop.
So, Krista, I want to ask you a general question.
Sure.
In the Theosophical literature, they mention chakras, but they really don't put a lot of emphasis on the development of the chakras. I think you are one of the few speakers who is talking about chakra development, and that's one of the goals of the evolution. What can you comment on that?
Well, I think part of it is because of the problem of conveying information. Okay, if you look at some of the books, I don't have them right now in my consciousness, but Ledbetter, Besant, especially have said, I have read this repeatedly, that the goal of evolution seems to be the development of this thread. Okay, the Sutratma. Now, the development of the thread happens through the development of the Antiquarana, through the development of the chakras, and through also a secondary development of the chakras. And so the development of this thread is incredibly complex. Now, we talked a little bit about this last night, that the chakras, some of them are actually the equivalent of physical organs, right? So the third eye is actually an eye that we use to see in the superphysical reality. The ear chakras are ears that we use to hear in that realm. The crown chakras is basically an organ that we use to receive information from the mind of God. So if these chakras are not developed, there is no way that we can navigate the superphysical planes of reality that represent our spiritual idea, our spiritual identity, and our spiritual homecoming. There's no way. You know, it's like me, you know, excuse this analogy, but if you didn't have eyes or ears, right, and I gave you a map, could you navigate to, you know, the other end of town? There's no way that you could. So the development of the chakras is really about the development of these other sense organs that allow us to take in information from our superphysical reality to begin to navigate those planes, to return to our home, our spiritual identity. Without it, we are deaf, dumb, and blind down those planes, and that's just the reality.
Now, Cristo, I got a question.
Yeah.
If our goal is to reach enlightenment or to reach this union with the Supreme Being in some way, many philosophies recommend celibacy. So to me, what it means is that you don't need to actually have all the chakras developed for you to actually reach your goal, which is enlightenment. Is this right?
Yes, and I do think that includes the development of the sacral center as well. You know, there are some, you know, Alice Bailey talks about this. There's a book on Laya Yoga where the yogi talks about this. You know, the statement that people should live a celibate life is not really practical for most people. It's just not. You know, each of the chakras, in my opinion, represents what I call an instinct. So if you look at this, there's an instinct to think, there's an instinct to speak, there's an instinct to feel, and there's an instinct to sex. You know, the problem is, like, you know, forgive me for using these examples, but with the Catholic Church, with the Boy Scouts, you know, you have people who are probably suppressing their sexual energies or aspects that they cannot control, and so they end up being suppressed and yet coming out sideways. You know, would it not have been better for those men or those women even to basically settle down and to experience normal sexual relations with another adult human being? rather than to experience sexual relationships with children. You know, I sincerely believe that the denial of one's sexual nature oftentimes leads to corruption of some sort. And this is why some of the masters actually either demanded or encouraged their pupils or devotees to become married. You know, it seems to stand in contradiction to our development. But, you know, or if you think about it, there might be a point in time where you choose to be celibate in order to redirect that energy here. But I think that you have to be careful of that process, that you're not doing it from a place where that energy comes back and bites you in the butt. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's helpful.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think of sex as a normal human instinct that in most cases, it needs a reasonable and normal outlet.
So, Cristo, what about the role of Kundalini with respect to these energy centers?
So I have a different understanding of Kundalini. You know, my sense of Kundalini is that it's really about this central thread, the Sutratma. So the Sutratma, remember we talked about the formation of the Antiquarana, essentially around it, a secondary tube of light. Well, at certain points when the inner vortice functions at a really high rate of speed, it begins to push energy out of the central channel and causes the development or expansion of the chakra. When the function of this inner vortice reaches a certain degree of development or expression, it's like there's a Kundalini explosion that happens. Now, George Arundel talks about the development of the chakras as a consequence of Kundalini. And I agree with him, because if you look at a person's energy field, that you can basically see where Kundalini is focused in their system. You know, they may have an exceptionally developed sacral center. They may have an exceptionally developed solar plexus center, or an exceptionally developed heart or throat or brow or crown. And what this means is that Kundalini is functioning uninhibitedly in these areas of advanced development.
Okay.
Tria, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's the same question with John.
The Kundalini one?
Yes. How did it relate to all these chakras? That's all.
Yeah, I think of the innermost thread as being a source of incredible energy. And the job of the conduit is essentially to conduct the energy from within to without. So as it undergoes structural changes, it becomes capable of carrying energy from inside to the outside. And this would be considered, I think, Kundalini.
So the energy flow, we see that it's coming from the top to the bottom. Are there other energy flows coming from the bottom to the top?
I don't see that. I mean, what I do see is that in terms of the Antiquarana, so when you have the human energy field, all right, there we go. So again, if this is the solar logos, this down here is the human being, that over the course of time, the Antiquarana forms. Basically, if you look at it, it's largely from the bottom up, although that's not exactly true. But this channel widens from a thread to a cable. where once the inner vortices are formed and they form like a chain link all the way up to the logos, then there's direct communication between the mind of the logos to the mind of the individual.
Okay.
Okay.
Krista, I have a question.
Sure.
This is Shanti. So in addition to John's question, energy moving from down to the top, all the energy, everything's energy. So all the energy that we use is sexual energy. That's, you know, the energy that comes out of that. Now, if I think the reason why, I think it was Jamshed's question, why they are, you know, people are asked to refrain from sex if they're going to a spiritual path, is instead of using all that sexual energy to push it out down that way to procreate, using that same energy to push it all the way up to activate the pineal gland and to open up that path. Is that true or no? What are your thoughts on that?
So I have seen, so I want to share this with you, but I want to be clear on it. People normally think of themselves as the exceptions, okay, to the rule, right? The general rule is that people are not capable of fully shutting off their sexual nature. And so what happens is that it's like a faucet that has essentially a slow leak, right? So people are not capable of closing down their sexual drive or their sexual needs completely. And so that energy is never able to fully move up the central channel to hit the pineal gland. Now, I have seen at least one person in the course of 12 years, and you remember I've seen hundreds, if not thousands of people. There is one person that I saw who came to me, and this is at a point in time when my intuitive abilities were not that developed. I knew that she was experiencing Kundalini rising from her sacral center. And what had happened was she was completely celibate. Her sexual nature was completely denied or completely suppressed, completely shut off. And the energy was traveling up and it was hitting her pituitary gland and it was causing her to have spiritual experiences. Now, looking back through her life, I also knew that she had suffered sexual abuse as a child. So because of the way that she was sexually abused, she basically no longer had any sort of sexual urge or sexual drive. So it completely shut off the flow of energy that one would normally experience as a normal human being who's not suffered these things. Okay.
True. But so that's like an extreme case. So I think my question is, that could be a balance of these energies. You can still live a normal life and yet learn how to bring, I mean, not just totally abstain from sex, but then use that energy to enhance your spiritual life. I mean, I believe everything in balance, right? Everything in balance, not extremities, one or the other. Why can't we enjoy both?
Well, I think that there's, you know, I don't know exactly. So if you're talking about the periodic enjoyment of sex, that seems natural to me. Okay. I think that any time that our identity becomes focused in a single chakra, that our life is out of balance. Okay. You know, I think that, you know, I look at it this way, that the function of our sacral center and the function of our crown chakra is different. You know, that's why we have a crown chakra, and that's why we have a sacral center. You know, one is about sex and procreation. The other is about ascension or contact with the mind of God. Just like our third eye is about knowledge and wisdom, and our throat chakra is about making meaningful sounds. Our solar plexus is about feeling. So our sacral center has a place among the other chakras and serves an individualized function. It's when the sacral center, or any chakra in reality, and I think that this is true of the crown chakra, that if you solely live in the crown chakra, like some people solely live in the sacral center, then you are doing yourself a disservice. You know, it's kind of like, you know, people who have really expansive homes and they live in one room. Why would you do that? You know, the idea is that we live in all of these rooms to some degree because they have a specific purpose in terms of our growth and evolution. That's how I see it. So while it is true that some people can cut off the flow of energy through to their sacral center and use that energy for spiritual union, I've only seen one example of it, and they were only able to do it because they were sexually traumatized. Okay. I know personally I cannot recommend the practice, but you know, I also take a very embodied approach to spirituality. I think that, again, my argument is, well, if we have these 14 different chakras and they serve 14 different purposes, and they must be, and God creates purposefully, there must be some viable reason that each of these exist in the scheme of things. Okay. Somebody was asking a question, I think.
Yeah, that Cristo, would Buddha be an exception to the rule because he didn't use his?
Tell me what you mean. I'm trying to find you in the.
I'm Jamshed. What I mean is,
there you are.
Buddha was celibate, right? So he didn't use that chakra at all, and yet he achieved nirvana. Or so was he an exception?
You know, I think that I'm quite convinced that Buddha had chosen a life of celibacy. I think it was because of his just non-interest in entanglement. This is my position. I mean, I can't say that I'm an expert at climbing back through history to explore it, but given the development of his field at an energetic level, I believe that he was successful in rerouting energy. But, you know, again, we're talking about, you know, if you look at the statistics on it, it's kind of along the lines of playing the lottery, you know. And a lot of people, I think, frankly, they damage themselves through the practice of celibacy because they're not going to be able to achieve the advanced state that people are after. But instead, integrating it into one's life and having the reasonable expression of it, I think will take the person further. Okay. Because, you know, we're meant to be, you know, part of the sacral function isn't really just sex and sexual expression. It's about being part of a larger group or organization. Okay. You know, when people sexually unite with one another, they basically, that uniting results in what I call egoic sex units. In other words, families. Okay. So what do we know about families is that they, just like the relationship between married couples or couples in partnership, is that the relationship drives their evolution. You know, you throw a child into the mix, and that drives the evolution in other ways that are important for the overall development of humanity. In fact, I would argue that having children facilitates the development of the heart chakra, the solar plexus. You know, I mean, in these two feeling centers are incredibly important for actually seeing humanity as something beautiful. You know, I see a lot of people who have advanced spiritual development who have a lot of, what is the word? They have a lot of resentment toward humanity. You know, have you met those people? No, this is a very serious question. That some people who claim spiritual advancement, that they have a lot of resentment toward humanity. I've seen this repeatedly. And it's because they don't really form a part of a connection to a larger group and really understand what it means to be human. To be human is to be fallible. It's to have chakras that are only 27% developed as opposed to 100% perfect. It means that you're going to have strengths and weaknesses that are different than mine, right? So in understanding this, there's a certain level of acceptance of not only my humanity, but your humanity or the collective humanity of the globe. And so now, I don't dislike anybody. I understand that we are all in this reality developing together in some way. And, specifically my connection to my children has really helped me come out of retreat and be a person who exists in the world rather than separate from the world. But that's just my opinion.
A good opinion.
Do you have children, Jamshed?
Yes. What about?
Well, yeah. I have two. I have a 14-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Actually, I don't have any children. So.
Oh, you don't have any children?
No.
Well, that's okay too.
That's why I'm out of balance.
Well, if I had not had children, I would have lived a totally different life. I think that I would be in a hermitage someplace studying God. And so my chakras would not show the same level of development. So, I just normally encourage people to live a balanced life. That is really, I think, what my teaching is about. If there are 14 chakras, that means that there are 14 facets of one's inner reality that represent demands and opportunities for growth.
Yeah, similar to what Jamshed said, we have, for instance, in the monasteries, we have nuns, and also we have some priests who do not marry. And for this incarnation, maybe a few of them might not be living up to their promise, but that's what they want to do this incarnation. What do you have? What are your comments about what they are doing?
This is the difficulty that I see. Again, not to focus on the negative aspects, but I think that this part has to be really understood. So when a person establishes a pattern, like I can look at sometimes I can look at a person's past lives. And if they set up the archetype of the nun, the monk, the priest, the sannyasin, or the renunciate, these patterns become ingrained in consciousness, and they become incredibly difficult to override or to change the direction of them. So what this means is that, like for me, I'm able to see some of my past lives, and for a lot of them, I've been in temples. I have been in these very secluded, dedicated spaces to God. And so now I'm learning a different lesson at this point in my incarnation period. But it's very difficult for me because I have many aspects of living in the world that have been unlearned, because I have spent time really focusing on learning about my crown chakra and God and spirituality. So my development is, what would you call it? It's not balanced. Not that I think that, balance is kind of it's a concept, it's an idea, right? But I think that sometimes living these other lives can set up patterns that are very difficult to overcome. If it's done for a couple periods of life where the intention is really to grow or cultivate the crown chakra, to incorporate more spirituality into these other centers of consciousness, sure. I think that can be reasonable. But a lot of people just they get stuck here, and then they refuse to come back out. Have you ever met those people who are just stuck in the crown chakra?
No.
No, anybody here? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody here stuck in the crown chakra? Seriously.
That's a
Can you
typical
see and
example.
tell?
Intellectual as well. Are you including that as somebody that's intellectual?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that fits in this idea of being stuck in one of the chakras, particularly in the area of the head, where the person, when you interact with them, that there are pieces that are missing from their identity, right? I mean, I meet a lot of people, and again, usually for spiritual people, there is an impetus. There are, not only are there conscious goals and drives around the world of spirituality, but there are unconscious drives and motivations in terms of what they seek to derive from their spirituality. Has anybody evolved to the point yet where you're starting to get insights into those? Talk to me for a second. You know, do you recognize that you may have some other aspirations around your spirituality? Anybody gotten to that level yet?
Talk about that question more.
So there are people that I have met in the past who are unfortunately traumatized by their experiences growing up, and who use spirituality as a type of shield or as an escape from the world at large. Okay? I have seen this pattern frequently. I see Anna nodding her head, and Shanti is nodding her head as well. Can either one of you share your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I'd like to share. I think why I'm nodding my head is because, well, trying to escape the experience of life, using spirituality to escape the experience of life, and not realizing life is about experiences, and not whatever happens is how we pass through that experience, not judging it good, bad, right, or wrong. You know, and that's because you're on a spiritual path doesn't mean everything's going to go well in your life and everything's perfect. And accepting nothing will ever be perfect, but you can enjoy the experiences, and mastering, like we talked about earlier in our morning talk, mastering your thoughts and emotions as you go through those experiences, and not trying to deny it and push it away because I'm this spiritual thing.
Yeah, I think that those are two distinct forms of spirituality. One is inclusive and the other is exclusive.
For me,
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ann.
I was just going to say that I had a similar experience. I had a near out-of-body experience when I was 4, and I began to be stringently involved in religion and spirituality, and started meditating in my 20s. I would meditate 3 hours a day, but I was really meditating 3 hours a day to get away from this plane. I popped open immediately and started having interdimensional experiences and all kinds of things. But I wanted out. I would lie in bliss and say, "Take me now, take me now." So I was in it to get out.
Thank you, Ann, for sharing. And that's exactly what I mean, that sometimes the pursuit of spirituality is a reaction to trauma. And so part of this is becoming clean or becoming clear with oneself as to one's motivations and whether or not they're truly healthy. I think somebody else had a question. Was it Alfredo?
No, it is me, Maria. Hi, Christos. For me, I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but for me, it's, the reason I'm always reading about things is I have great curiosity about understanding the world and how things work. So for me, I guess I'm probably trapped at the head level, but it's about trying to understand things, trying to explore things. I'm curious about what is there beyond what we can see. So what it drives me in my case is a need to learn, a need to understand, a great curiosity about everything.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of your energetic nature. So part of it is your personality, Ray, and I think another part of it is a reaction to, again, early childhood trauma. I think that you wanted to understand. So to me, your experience of your childhood and the injury that exists there, it's about trying to understand or reason or intellectualize the process of trauma. Does that make sense?
Maybe, yeah, I had a difficult childhood, yes. I had
Right.
some difficult, I got to see things that I shouldn't have seen, let's say.
Yeah. And so if you can intellectualize them or rationalize them, then you can mitigate the suffering or the pain associated with them. You can transcend it. And I think that that's part of the intellectual curiosity, is an attempt to heal that wound.
And okay.
But those, at the same time, those negative experiences, that pain and suffering, that's really what allows us to mature and to grow. Don't you think? I mean, I think it
Well,
makes us who we are.
This is my thought, that sometimes those experiences throw up pretty incredible obstacles to our further growth and development. Again, if we're only 27% developed, and those who raise us are 27% developed, that the things that they inflict upon us actually cause they basically stunt our growth. Like, it's Maria, right?
Yeah, this is Maria.
Like Maria said, she said, well, I'm probably in my head to the in such a way that my other chakras are not properly growing or evolving, right? Now, and I think that is true. It's an accurate self assessment. So if we take that and look, the development of her lower chakras is impeded by her negative experiences. So while she's intact intellectually, it has caused or has compromised the functionality of her lower chakras. Okay. This generates, do you resonate with that, Maria?
Maybe because I live so much in my head, I'm not really paying attention to those other chakras. And maybe the experience that I had as a child, I feel that although they were negative, they were triggers for me to expand my mind, I guess.
Right. Okay, so
that's how I see it. I said there were many, probably they were not good experiences, but that's how I see them, as opportunities for learning, that if I had a more normal childhood, I don't know how it would have developed.
Right. Well, what happens is this, that our environment and our experiences leaves psychological and emotional scars. Okay. Like I look at you and, in terms of your psychological functioning or your intellectual function, it's really high. But I think in terms of your emotional functioning, it's much lower. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So what that means is that one of the key aspects, I'm going to get a new sheet of paper here. So if we look at this, one of the key aspects to a human being is the development of the solar plexus, this chakra right here. And our friend, because of her childhood circumstances, now has the compromised functioning of this chakra. Okay, that means that she doesn't have the same level of emotional development as some other people. Well, what this means is that her emotional connection to other people is not very high. Would you agree with that?
I'm very mental, yes. I mean, I can relate to a lot of people, but I'm not that emotional.
I guess the question is, in terms of your emotional attachment to people,
I'm not getting very good at attaching myself to other people. Yeah.
You're not very good at that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is one of the key features. The solar plexus is a key feature of our connection to other people. This is one of the main anchor points of relationships. So if you don't have a high functioning solar plexus center, it can compromise your relationships because so the solar plexus is essentially the glue that holds the relationship together. Okay, now this is not to say that she cannot develop this capacity or that it's not there to some degree, but this is just a quick look at what it means to have a solar plexus center that has compromised functionality. You know, in her own words, I don't get attached easily. Is that true, Maria?
Well, I mean, I like people, I have friends, I mean, and I enjoy being with them, but I'm not very emotional. I can see like some girlfriends, when they talk to me, I see them so emotional and I'm thinking so rational and I don't get why they get so emotional.
Right, and it's because that part of your identity is not fully developed or not intact. So like I said earlier, you know, our development is all different. So whereas some people have the functional solar plexus center and the related emotional experiences and identity, some people don't have that right now. Just like you will likely have a greater intellectual development than most of your peer group, your girlfriends, right? That you function intellectually in a way that they don't yet, right? Which is definitely a blessing to you and something for them to look forward to as they continue to grow and evolve.
Okay. I think you're accurate.
You think I'm accurate?
Yes.
Cristo, what is the role of music for the development of these chakras?
You know, it's something that I've not really studied, but I would look at it from this way, that each plane of matter is like a musical note. So as each of these notes play over the human energy field, they call out a response, right? That begins to develop the human energy field. These are the rays or the primary tones of nature. Is that helpful?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I have a question. What's the influence of food in the development of chakras?
One more time.
Food like vegetarian, non-vegetarian, what's the influence of food on
The
chakras
influence of
development?
food.
Yeah.
You know, I find, you know, personally, sometimes people will ask me, are you a vegetarian? I'm not a vegetarian. It's not that I encourage or discourage, but you know, Carolyn Mace is another interesting person. And she talks a bit about this. You know, she claims that there is no relationship between spirituality and food. She said people can eat cat food and be spiritual, that it doesn't matter. Now, I don't think that you should go out and eat cat food and be spiritual, but I think that it is true that I have found that if my diet is better, if I eat more fruits and vegetables, that it is true that my intuition seems to function better. Okay, but my overall health seems to be improved if I eat a more clean diet. For me, at this point, my diet consists largely of hamburgers and French fries.
So you said that if we stop desire on any certain chakra fields, then that chakra will stop growing. Then does the same thing applies to the food also? Like if people wants to eat non-veg and forcefully they stop themselves, thinking that eating vegetarian will help them grow.
Yeah,
Do you think that?
Well, a lot of people are surprised when I tell them that I'm not vegetarian, because I've heard a lot of people basically say to me that they think that to develop these sorts of abilities, one has to be a strict vegetarian. But you know, I think that they're, you know, like Madame Blavatsky was a heavy smoker. Do you remember? I mean, And there have been other clairvoyants who have had other unhealthy practices that doesn't really seem to negatively impact, to a great extent, their ability to see in that other world. You know, I do think that that eating food that's more in alignment with or has a higher vibration can certainly be helpful to the development of these abilities. But, you know, again, like with vegetarianism, I think it's really important to do it properly. Like I've met more vegetarians who are slowly starving to death than I have met vegetarians who are actually successfully eating a vegetarian diet. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions about what we've talked about so far?
Well, this is going to be the third time this question was asked. And
All
that
right.
is, okay. And that is about healing the chakras or bringing them back into balance. I guess maybe we're really wanting some how-tos. And you say like live an expanded life. But like John, I mean, I have an interest in that because I have a money thing too. So, I mean, like how do you, like if you had a money deal where you know you were limited in that area because of belief systems, do you have any kind of practical advice on healing that?
You know, everybody has beliefs and belief systems around every aspect of life. And so, you know, in terms of the development of our central channel and the development of the chakras, if you were to clairvoyantly look at the chakras, what you would see is that there are dense forms around mostly all of them. So there are like these globs of energy or globs of dark matter around each of the chakras. Well, these are beliefs or belief systems that negatively impact the growth and development of that chakra. You know, what normally happens is that over the course of time, one unconsciously goes through the process of working through these beliefs. So a belief will form, a belief will be maintained, and then it'll start undergoing degeneration. And parts and pieces of it will basically be chipped away at until the belief is gone. For instance, when I look at a person's energy field at this point, I can see scars in the person's auric field that result from this process of the formation of a belief and what I call the attenuation and finally the collapse of a belief. You know, if you don't mind me sharing, Anne, this is an example. Is it okay with you if I share something?
Yes, yes.
So there's a scar through this area of your auric field. Okay, it's actually a pretty big one that indicates that at one time you held the belief that either A, you didn't like yourself, or B, you thought that you were not attractive.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
Well, I mean, maybe some of both of it. But, Lucy, be quiet, girl. Probably that I was not attractive because I'll look at pictures and say she was really nice looking, and then but at the time I didn't think, I thought I was terrible looking.
Right. Perfect. So this, right, I was terrible looking. This is a belief that you had that occupied this space in your auric field that over the course of time you essentially worked through. So now there's only a scar-like formation in your energy field where this belief was. So you didn't set about normally consciously saying, "No, I'm going to dismantle this belief," but it happens through unconsciously working through it. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The same thing happens through these beliefs and belief systems that accrete around our chakras, that the process is largely unconscious and it resolves itself unconsciously as well. Or you can expedite the process by becoming conscious of it. And you can basically put your consciousness in the area of the chakra and say, what negative beliefs do I carry here? Okay, or you could say, what negative beliefs do I have around money? You know, it is interesting because once you locate the belief and you begin to consciously work with it, it is dismantled much more quickly than if just left to a normal state of degeneration. Okay, so if you go through the chakras, you can sometimes, I think, identify the beliefs and belief systems that you carry that affect that negatively impact their growth and development. Make sense?
Yeah. Yes, I think, but I think what you're saying really to me is that whenever we work on ourselves and we heal ourselves in sort of the normal channels, like whether we're using affirmations or whether we're breathing through something or whatever, that naturally reflects in the chakra. In other words, you don't go to the chakra to heal it. You just go to life and work with it, and that heals it.
Yeah, this is what we're doing regardless. That time and new experiences results in a correction of the underlying belief or belief system.
Right.
So actually, Cristo, there's two ways of doing it, like unconsciously working through it over time, over a long period of time, over years, or consciously working on it and consciously, like you said, ask. When you mentioned the questions to ask yourself, if you feel stuck in a certain area, to ask those questions. Where are you feeling pain? Where are you most inhibited, or where are you holding yourself from growth and development? When you consciously work on your unconscious stuff, because that takes time, and I believe, instead of working it unconsciously.
Right. Well, to work through a problem unconsciously can take 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 80 years. Because it's unconscious, there is no degree of certainty. In fact, I oftentimes use this as an example that, I know 80 and 90-year-old people who have 80 and 90-year-old beliefs. That they have beliefs that are not contemporary, that they're taken over, they're basically they're transported through time and they exist now, right? So it's definitely not a guarantee that time is going to help you work through the belief, but being conscious of them does give you another layer of assurance that you're going to make more progress with them more quickly. The problem that I have found is that people in general are not aware of all of their negative beliefs. So what I find is that people have blind spots. So while they have some beliefs that they're aware of, they have a whole lot of other beliefs that they're not aware of. Does that make sense?
Yes, Cristo, it makes a lot of sense, because I do a coaching program myself to help people with that. But not only that, some people are afraid of facing these and bringing it to the active experience, because unconscious, when you make them think and you have them question, pose these questions, they have to face themselves. And after facing themselves, they have to make a change. And sometimes change is not easy. People are afraid to change. And I've come across people who are just comfortable in where they are.
Well, I think that you have to realize that the defenses that people employ are protective. And so a lot of the beliefs and belief systems that people have, they create a protective barrier around them. That while it protects them on one side, it also isolates them on the other side.
Sure.
But to give up their protection is a very scary process. In fact, I was working with a guy the other day, and this is the second time we talked. He's like, since talking with you, I feel happier. And he said, I'm looking at life differently. And he said, but every now and then there's this grumpy part of me that comes up and says, starts, growling in his ear. And he said, it's such a comfortable part of me that I wonder how I will live without that part. I'm like, well, you'll live more freely because now you don't have that part of your identity that's basically toxifying your field, right? But the problem that he was bringing up is that I don't know what I'm going to do without this part of me that has helped me survive in the world for the last 50 years.
Absolutely true.
So I think people have to really be ready to transcend their defenses. And for people, it generally means that they have to create some new way of living that assures them survival and security. And if they don't have that, then they are really confronting death of some sort through the loss of their defense.
So, Cristo, yesterday you talked about the Vipassana meditation. You think it will be useful respect to getting rid of our old beliefs that are hindering us?
It's one of the most effective forms of meditation that I have found to work through unconscious beliefs and belief systems. Okay, it's definitely, it's slow, but it's effective. You know, and to me, it's a lot better than other meditation practices like meditating on a candle or meditating on your breath. Because you don't learn anything about yourself during those forms of meditation. But if you sit in meditation and imagine looking down over the city of your own consciousness, and then all of a sudden you have some content that comes up and you're able to see inside of yourself, your thoughts, your ideas, that there is some self-knowledge that is gained through that process, no matter what. Okay.
Well, Cristo, don't you believe that there's a part of us, our mind, the subconscious mind knows everything and can help us. It's like a filing system. It knows everything, and using that wisdom or higher wisdom to help heal or treat whatever trauma or emotions.
I think that there is a part of our inner identity, I would call it the Sutratma, where we're connected to God. But we're connected to God by a cable that is thinner than a thin piece of thread. So if you think about it in terms of computer or data transfer, it's like 4 bits of information per second. Okay, it's not very fast. The data transfer is terrible. And that's why over the course of time, the Sutratma widens and forms now a fiber optic cable between you and God. Now there's a tether. So now we're talking about incredible amounts of data that can be communicated into consciousness in fractions of a second. The problem is that it takes a while to get there. So while yes, it is true that we are connected to God and there's information there that can be valuable and to assist us in our spiritual progress, that information also is not easily accessible, but will become more accessible as we evolve. Okay, so while some people are more in tune with their unconscious, other people are not going to have the benefit of that because they've not built the cable yet that connects them to their unconscious. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
So Cristo, I have a question. So you alluded to that you have been developing in past lifetime your crown chakra. So literally the fact that you are able to open your crown chakra early in life is something that is not just just particularly to this particular lifetime. You just inherit from the prior lifetime, right? I mean, so all these chakra we develop them, and then when we get incarnated to the next lifetime, is it at the same level, or is that something that had to be developed again?
To me, it looks like we're basically at the same level of development as to where we left off.
Okay.
you know, for me, meditation practices are somewhat natural given my history, but they were not natural given my childhood environment. So once I resumed the practice of meditation, yes, it took me 10 years roughly to have this sudden development of my crown chakra where I began to know things through the power of claircognizance. But if I look through a number of my past lives, I've done very similar work where I'm teaching people, educating them according to the human energy field and things of that nature. So I end up being in the same role that I've historically occupied. It's true. I'm like, well, here we are again. Any questions about the chakras? Has this lecture been helpful?
It has been very helpful, Chris. I think it has given us a perspective in the chakras that at least I have never seen before.
Thank you.
So it's more in-depth, more, and at the same time more practical. Great. Instead of just seeing some drawings and some jerk from some books, you make it very personal.
Do you have a YouTube channel, Cristo?
I do not have a YouTube channel yet. I do actually have my website is CristoBowers.com, and I have recently created a library of my past lectures and classes. It's ChristosLibrary.com.
I checked it out last night.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it has it has a lot of content that I've done over the last several years. So my goal is to put everything that I do on it at this point.
Would be nice. I mean, as I said, I mean, this presentation yesterday had been eye-opening. It has opened a lot of so many possibilities, and maybe we might have considered them, but you have personal experience, and you're very good in communicating that to people and to relate it to people.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Krista.
You're welcome, Mary.
And thank you very much. It's been, especially today, it's been wonderful. I've never had such a clear understanding of the chakras. It's always been a little bit fuzzy, and so you really clarified a lot for me, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Are there any other questions about the chakras?
I don't have one, but Crisco, just one final question. This is a technology issue that I want to ask. What tablet are you using to draw? Because I would love to have that.
Oh, you know, I love my tablets. I do. You know, it's actually the Wacom tablets.
Oh, Wacom. Okay.
Is it a big one or is it a small one?
No, mine are big. I have a 22 inch and a 24 inch.
Oh,
so
really nice.
Yeah, you know what's really nice is that on eBay, you can look around and find the older models, and they're pretty cheap. Like the one that I'm using is a 22 inch, and it was $400. And my larger one I found for $800 from a person.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so to me, like it's so important for me to be able to convey information through illustrations.
Yeah.
And so basically, this is my digital pen. So I draw directly onto my screen. And it's just made, you know, before I would try drawing with a mouse, and it never works.
Yep.
But the Wacom tablets and the digital pens gives me the ability to draw a straight line, be able to draw a chakra, be able to draw, you know, a human head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so fast.
You're very good. You're very good at drawing, Cristo. You have a talent there.
I actually my first thing that I did direct out of high school was go to art school. So it's like at least I wanted to be a fine artist. And so it's come in handy through this, you know, my teaching.
Yeah, because even simple drawings of a person, they're very proportional. I can't do that. Yeah.
You know, I have. You should, if you think that that's impressive, you should have seen my old sketch pads. I mean, my work really was beautiful. In fact, I had a friend of mine borrowed my sketch pads because he loved the drawings and wanted to learn from them.
Yeah.
So now I get to draw on my Wacom tablet with my digital pen, and
Well, that helps a lot to it as you're using as a very good tool to communicate your experiences. Because I mean, just talking is not enough. Some people need to see, visualize, and your drawings are helping.
Thank you.
To make it more clear.
It was
And
very good.
That has been very helpful to all of us.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. You know, when I finally discovered these tablets and I saw that I could use them in this work with people, it was really a way of revolutionizing my ability to communicate information to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm using my tablet for my teaching right now. My iPad, I love it. I don't think I would have been able to function and do all the things that I'm doing right now without that tablet.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, the Wacom tablet, it turns your computer into a touch screen as well. So the way that it plugs in, and you know, to me, I love touch screens.
They have them on Amazon.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, my computer just does that. I mean, I can just do it in Word. I can do all that in Word.
Yeah.
But this is paint, right?
Draw and
yeah, this is
colors.
paint. I can use
I mean,
this.
it has a paint function.
Yeah, I
Or it
can
has a
use
paint
this in
function.
Photoshop. I can use it in any drawing program. You know, to me, again, it's just a matter of being able to draw a straight line, and I can't do that with a mouse.
Well, you can use a stylus with on my computer.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, the stylus changes everything.
Excuse me, one more question before you go. Could you repeat where your library is? The website?
It's christoslibrary.com. So it's CRISTOS library.com. So let me see this here.
ChristosLibrary.com.
Yeah, and if you look, you know, if you have an interest, I actually have monthly classes that I teach at this point. My goal is to, for instance, like this on Monday, I'm giving a lecture on the esoteric significance of the swastika. And then I'm giving a lecture on the energetic symbology of Joan of Arc's coat of arms. Things like this. Yeah. I mean, they're really fascinating, and they're basically glimpses into the superphysical planes of matter and that energetic reality there. So check out, you know, my normal website is ChristoBowers.com. And you can also subscribe to my website and just, you know, see what I'm doing. I send out notices periodically. I don't spam people. You know, I send out maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4 announcements per month of classes. And they're all very similar to what I've done with you here.
Well, you have done such an excellent job in teaching, your teaching style, your skill, your personality, and your material. It's incredible. Thank you so much.
So I have a favor to ask of you. Everybody who believes that, give me just 1 second, okay? So I think this is okay if I do this. I am going to give you an email address, okay? This is the fellow who is responsible for basically setting up these spaces. You know, and I think it's really important for him to receive feedback. David Bruce, I believe. You know, send him a note as to what you experienced with me. Tell him what you liked. Tell him what worked for you, what I did well. Because he's essentially.
Oh, David. Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, because he's not here with
Yeah.
us. He doesn't really he doesn't really know what this looks like at the ground level, but you do. And so I think that you can just apprise him of what it was like to set with me for 3 lectures, for those of you who've been here with me for all 3. Okay?
We will.
Very well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Cristo.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions or any other thoughts?
Yeah, as I understand, these lectures will be shown on YouTube, and I wonder when they will be uploaded.
That is Tria. Tria, do you know
Yes,
where?
I just in the chat window, you can find the chat window. The previous 2 last session has already been uploaded and the link is already shared. So this should be shared later on tonight.
Where do you
Did,
Okay, thank you.
when did you share? You said you had already shared the one. I looked this morning. I was trying to get a link to share this morning on the chakra one. Was it already posted this morning or not?
The chakra one just happened right now, right?
No, the one from last night.
Oh, the sensory powers.
When did you share that one, Tria?
Are you able to see the link?
Well,
Yes.
but when I think once we get off the chat, we won't be able to see it.
Where do you?
Would you email them?
If you open up the chat window, it should be in the chat window.
I'd like to do it in a way that allows participation, question and answers as we move forward. I think that this is really a delicate subject, and so my goal is to make sure that everybody who is here in the space is able to have a clear understanding.
Somebody's talking.
There we go. Where do you find the chat box? I don't see it.
Oh, the bottom here. At the bottom.
Oh, let me take a look.
Go to more.
Top right, go to more.
Top right.
Mine's bottom right.
It depends on what kind of device.
It depends on your, yeah.
It depends on your device that you
there it is.
sharing. Yes.
Okay, great. I see it now. Yeah, I really like Zoom. It's a great platform.
Okay, so thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Crystal, for dedicating your time to talk with us, Houston Theosophical community. We greatly enjoy what you have shared with us. I personally learned a whole lot with all these lectures. And if there's any other final question, I'm going to be stopped recording.